He says, nor perchance, if I were not thus taught, should I the more suffer my genial spirits to decay. Even as yet, he is talking about, he's just concluding, he's talking about his relationship with nature and he's just concluding it. He says, it's not without chance, it's not perchance, he says, I have been schooled, I have been taught by nature. And if I had not thus been taught by nature, he says, I would have been nobody, I would have decayed. And so he's wondering if what would have happened to him if he did not recognize nature's blessings. Okay. Now comes the part where Dorothy is introduced, and he introduces her first as a friend. I will first read out the lines for you. He says, for thou art with me here upon the banks of this fair river. And remember, the river is the river Wye. Thou, my dearest friend, my dear, dear friend. So he repeats, just like in the first, if you recall the first part of the poem, when he's back here in Tintern Abbey again, and he is saying 5 long years, 5 summers. He's repeating 5, 5, 5, because he's emphasizing his return, his feelings. Here again he repeats, and this repetition highlights his relationship with nature. He says, for thou art with me. Look at his feeling of happiness. He says, I'm glad. He means that he's glad that Dorothy is with him upon the banks of this fair river. First it was a sylvan river, the spirit. Now he says a fair river. And he says, thou means you. He says, thou, my dearest friend, and then my dear, dear friend. So Dorothy is not his sister alone. She is a friend. So a friend, he calls her a friend because she shares his feelings, she shares his emotions. So she's a friend because he can confide in her, he can share his feelings with her. So she's more than a sister to him, and such is the importance of Dorothy in his life. Then he says, and in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart, and read my former pleasures in the shooting of thy wild eyes. Oh, yet a little while may I behold in thee what I once was, my dear, dear sister. So you see, he says, he's now connecting her, you can say, to nature. Remember, he used the word wild, secluded. He uses the word wild for nature, for the beauties of nature a lot. The wild hedges, the hedges going wild, they are beautiful for Wordsworth because they are unkept, because they are not trimmed. So they are beautiful. This wildness has a beauty for Wordsworth. But first he says, in thy voice, in your voice, I catch. He says, the language of my former heart. He says, when I hear you talking about and describing this place to me, naturally, Dorothy, remember please, that Dorothy was visiting this place for the first time. It was Wordsworth's second visit, but it was Dorothy's first visit. So she, like her brother, she was also fond of nature. She also took pleasure when she was surrounded by nature. So upon visiting this place, she must have expressed to Wordsworth how happy she was also to see those beauteous forms, and how the beauty of this place also held magic for him, like it did for his Wordsworth. So he says, when I hear your voice, when I hear you talk, I feel that you're talking in the same way as I used to. Former means previous, past. So he says, you talk in the same way as I used to feel about nature in my past. And read my former pleasures in the shooting of thy wild eyes. He says, wild, he calls him wild, not because she's sick or something, but he calls her eyes wild because they're excited. she's excited, she's happy. So he says the eyes have a wild light about them. So he says, when I look at you, when I hear your voice, or when I look into your eyes, I remember my own former pleasures, my pleasures of the past. Oh, yet a little while may I behold in thee what I was once. So this is the first time where we hear Wordsworth longing to feel like his sister is feeling now, to be like he was in the past, like when like a roe he bounded over the mountains, when nature did not have that, did not share that philosophical, intellectual link with him. So he says, oh, may I, for once I would like to share or be part of your happiness. And he says, and this prayer I make. Then he makes a prayer for her, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. It is her privilege through all the years of this our life to lead from joy to joy. This is important because he says that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. So he says he's going to make a prayer for her sister. And before he makes a prayer, he says, nature does not betray anyone. Because I love nature and you love nature, so nature will always be with us. And what is the second advantage? What is the second privilege of nature? He says that it leads from joy to joy. And because it never betrays, naturally you can connect. It's, because it does not betray you, because it does not betray your feelings, it always stays the same. Its love all for you always stays the same. Naturally you are always led on from one joy to the next joy. So there's only joy in your life. There is no sadness because nature does not betray. There is no betrayal. And when there is no betrayal, there is no sadness. Naturally there is always joy. So nature, you can see here, is giving off joy, is a source of pleasure. For she is nature. She can so inform the mind that is within us, so impress with quietness and beauty, and so feed with lofty thoughts. Again, you can connect this stanza to the different roles of nature. He says, nature can inform the mind. Nature can so inform us. So here nature is an informant. Nature is a teacher who informs us, who gives us knowledge, who teaches us about things. She so impresses with quietness and beauty. It is a beautiful piece of art. It is beauty to look at. So it leaves a deep impression upon our minds. And it feeds with lofty thoughts. And another role of nature is that it is like a nurse. It looks after us, but it also providing us with, he says, lofty, like sublime thoughts, lofty thoughts. So not base, but lofty thoughts. So much does nature give us, he says. It gives us, it informs the mind, it impresses with quietness and beauty, and it feeds with lofty thoughts. So much, he says, that nature gives us, that he says that neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of daily life shall ever prevail against us, or disturb our cheerful faith that all which we behold is full of blessings. So I have highlighted for you what aspects Wordsworth is describing. He says, neither evil tongues, nor rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where there is no kindness, nor dreary intercourse of daily life. So all these things, he says, cannot have an effect on us. They cannot influence us. Evil tongues are maybe you can say backbiting, people, the mischievous activities of people, people who are jealous of us, people who are talking behind our backs. So he says we are not, when we have nature as a support with us, when we have nature to guide us, when we have nature to teach us, when we have nature to nurse us, nothing can happen to us. Nobody can affect us. Not the evil tongues, those people with their evil intentions, they cannot harm us. Rash judgments, if we make judgments quickly, too soon, those judgments will not have a wrong effect on us, because nature is our support. Nor the sneers of selfish men. If selfish people laugh at us, they sneer at us, they cannot harm us. He says, and greetings where no kindness is, meaning people, of those proud people, even their pride cannot hurt us. And all the dreary intercourse of daily life, and he says all the boring jobs of our daily life, they cannot harm us, because he says nothing shall prevail against us. Nothing shall prevail against us. Nothing will affect us or disturb our cheerful faith. Okay? Because what we have is full of blessings. What we have is blessings and blessings and blessings. So nothing can pollute us, nothing can corrupt us, and nothing can harm us, because we have nature as our strength, we have nature as our support, we have nature as our protector. So he says, therefore, let the moon shine on thee in thy solitary walk, and let the misty mountain winds be free to blow against thee. So he becomes more poetic and poetic and poetic. He says, what does he say? He's expressing his love for his sisters, he says, because he's asked, in the previous lines, he asked her to let go of all the worries, to let go of all the tensions, to let go of all evil thoughts, to let go of all the previous faults, and to let go of all those ideas, all those feelings that you may have for others in your mind. He says, let go of all the negative things and just be with nature. Just be part of the nature and learn from nature and take from nature, and forget about those rash judgments, forget about those evil tongues, forget about those sneering people, forget about those proud people, and only enjoy being with nature. Enjoy this nature with me. So he says, he's mentioning some objects of nature. The first one is the moon. He says, therefore, let the moon shine on thee. So when you take long walks, solitary walks about this place, when you're going out for a walk in the lonely nights, he says, let the moon shine on you. Enjoy the beauty of the moonlight and absorb it. The next thing that he mentions is, let the misty mountain winds. The misty, naturally, London itself is a cold place, but so he says, because it is a valley, it is surrounded by mountains, cliffs from all sides, and the wind must be chilly, and it must be misty at night. So he says, this misty mountain wind, let it be free to blow against thee. He says, feel the wind blowing against you. So Wordsworth is basically asking her to share in the nature's blessings and to experience nature like he did in his past. And to, because by experiencing nature like this, she will take something from nature in return, like he did. So Wordsworth basically wants his sister here to become part of nature. Then he says, and in after years, when these wild ecstasies shall be matured into a sober pleasure, when thy mind shall be a mansion for all lovely forms, thy memory be as a dwelling place for all sweet sounds and harmonies. And later on, in the after years, when these wild ecstasies shall be matured into a sober pleasure, So you see what he's doing here, just like he did for himself in the first part. He showed you a gradual development in the association of nature for himself. Here he's asking Dorothy to go through the same stages. He's asking him to go through the same phases. He's asking him to learn the same way that he did. So he says these wild ecstasies will later on develop into sober pleasures, he says. So she too will develop an intellectual and moral and philosophical relationship with nature. But he says in after years, your relationship with nature will have matured like mine did. So this is why he uses the words wild ecstasies. Wild ecstasies, ecstasies is extreme joy. He says these wild, both the words have similar meaning. So by using them together, he's emphasizing it, that at the moment you feel these wild emotions when you are in nature. You are ecstatic when you are in nature. You are too excited. So these wild ecstasies, he says, will later on, with time, they will become and turn into sober pleasure. Sober pleasure. And then he says, when thy mind shall be a mansion. A mansion is like it's a huge living place. You can call it like a huge house. It's a huge house with too many rooms. It's not a palace actually, but it's a big house. So he says, your mind will become a huge house which will be able to store all the memory, which will be able to store all the memory of all the beauteous parts of nature. So when your mind will become the storehouse, when your mind will become the mansion of all these beautiful memories, and your mind, he says, your memory will be a dwelling place for all the sweet sounds and harmonies, he calls them. The sounds of the streams flowing and the sounds of nature, he says, your mind will become a storehouse, a dwelling place, a mansion of the lovely, beautiful forms of nature. This is what he says will happen to you in later years. And then what will happen? He says, oh, then, if solitude or fear or pain or grief should be thy portion, with what healing thoughts of tender joy wilt thou remember me and these my exhortations? So you see, now he says, when that happens, when your wild ecstasies turn into sober pleasures, and when your mind becomes a dwelling place, when it becomes a storehouse of all the beautiful forms, it becomes beautiful forms of nature, and they are stored in your mind as a memory, as beautiful memory, he says. And when you are alone, in solitude means when you're alone, or when you are filled with fear, when you're afraid, or when you're filled with pain, he says, or you're filled with grief. So if any one of these things should happen to you, he says, you will remember me and my words. My exhortations are his, these words of his. He says, with what healing thoughts of tender joy will you remember me? So he says, in cases, in places when you feel alone, afraid, in pain, or in grief, you will remember me and my words, because they will have a healing effect on you. So it doesn't mean that actually he will have healing effect on him. What he means is, because he's teaching her what nature can do, how nature can heal. So what he actually means is that by learning from his experience, Dorothy can also learn a great deal. Because she can also learn to rely on nature as something that can heal. Nor perchance, next lines he says, nor perchance, if I should be where I no more can hear thy voice, nor catch from thy wild eyes these gleams of past existence? Wilt thou then forget that on the banks of this delightful stream we stood together? This is the part which I spoke of earlier on. He's now talking about his death. He says, he's talking about that time in future when he will not be around and Dorothy might be alone in this world without him. So he says, if I should be where I no more can hear thy voice, nor can I catch your wild eyes. So he says, there may be time in future where I cannot hear you. Wilt thou then forget? But he says, you should remember, you should not forget. He's although asking her, but what he means is that you will remember, he hopes that she will remember that they stood together on the banks of this delightful stream. So this delightful stream is the river Wye once again. So he says, I hope that that nature, because that is their common pleasure, that nature will remind her of him when she will stand on the bank of this river, when she will be in this place again, when she will see the beauteous forms again. He says she will be reminded of him. So nature will serve as a reminder. Nature will not let her forget him. And that I, so long a worshipper of nature, hither came unwearied in that service, rather say with warmer love, oh, with far deeper zeal of holier love. Now comes the declaration. You see, he declares himself as a worshipper of nature. He says, I as a worshipper of nature. He says, you will remember that I as a worshipper of nature came to this place. He's talking to nature as if nature is a deity here. Again, he does not use the word God. He does not say that he's lost his faith all of a sudden. He does not believe any God anymore. He doesn't say any of those things, but he simply says, I worship nature, and then he portrays it, describes it as a deity, as some divine figure, because he says, I came to its service unwearied, without being tired. So in service, you use the word, I came in that service as a servant of nature, as a worshipper of nature. And then look at the next two phrases that he uses. He says, with warmer love, and with far deeper zeal and holier love. This word is significant. He says, holier love. First it's warmer love, but then warmer love turns into holier love. So it is something more precious. It's not just a passing love. It's not just a deep love. It's a warm love, he says. But it's more than warm. He says it is a holier love. It is holy. He feels that it is holy, and that is why he feels that it is going to last, because it is not something that is physical only. It's something that is rooted in his soul. It's become holy now. So he says, when he declares himself as a worshipper of nature, he says that he came here in servitude and in knowledge of nature's immense blessings. He knows that nature can bless a man with a lot. Nor wilt thou then forget that after many wanderings, many years of absence, these steep woods and lofty cliffs and this green pastoral landscape were to me more dear both for themselves and for thy sake. Again, he's addressing his sister. And he says, and you will also not forget. You will also, he says, nor wilt thou then forget, and you will also not forget that after many wanderings, many years of absence, and you know it is 5 years absence, when he is returned back to this place, he says that after years of absence, when I have returned to this place is special to me, he says. It is dear to me for itself, but it's not just for itself, but he says it's also for yourself. So you see, the importance that he's giving to his sister. He says, for me this place is special the second time, because I am visiting this place with you. Now that you are with me, this place has become more memorable for me. So this second visit is so much different from his previous first visit, when he visited alone and he only found aching joys in nature and he did not have a companion. But now he has his sister with him, and he says her presence has made it even more memorable. So he is happier that he has visited this special place with a special person. So this is why this visit is even more precious to him, even more significant for him than the first visit. And Wordsworth is more indebted to nature now, and he's more grateful to nature, because he feels that he has been blessed so much this time upon the second visit. So he says, this is special for me, both for itself and for thy